Seller financing, how did we do it and how can you do it as well? First, you're going to want to meet with a real estate professional who knows how to do this, because Aunt Sally and Uncle Joe are awesome people, but unless they've gone through the process of seller financing their home, they're not the people to be talking to about how to seller finance a home. You know what I mean? Next, we're going to find a home, so let's go find one. Now, this part is tricky because we have to find a property that includes a seller that owns the property outright, or at least has enough of their loan balance paid down to where a wraparound mortgage could work. Now, what worked for us was finding a landlord who didn't want to be a landlord anymore. He owned the house outright. He still liked having the income producing aspect of being one, but he didn't want to answer the phone at 3 a.m. because the water heater went out. So what worked for him is finding an interest payment that is actually making him the same, if not more, per month than being a landlord. And it's still an interest payment that for us, we're purchasing the home for less per month than we would if we went through traditional financing. Let me show you a breakdown of how that calculation works. What we're looking at here is a $530,000 purchase, but we put down $40,000, so the loan is only $490,000. Over the next 30 years for the amortized schedule at 5%, now this could be negotiated higher or lower, we're going to see a monthly payment at the top there, $2,630.43 per month. A lot of that is the interest and some of that's the principal. As you can see with this amortized schedule here, for 30 years, the red line is consistently paying off the same amount every month. But then the blue line is paying down the balance, and the green line is the interest payment. And as you can see, looking at this, at the graph below here, you'll notice even more so that in the first year that you're making your payments, about $25,000 of that is just paying. Well, that was a mouthful. Let's break it down. When you're purchasing a home over 30 years, you're paying a lot of that interest payment up front. And then the last half of it, you're mostly paying down the principal. So let's say you are telling the seller that you will refinance within the next 10 years so that they are fully paid out. And the seller says, well, you know what, if you refinance in the next year, what's the point of me doing this? Because I'm not really going to make a whole lot of money off of it. That's where you can negotiate, okay, if we refinance at any point within whatever time frame, you will at least get a certain amount of years worth of interest payments. For example, on that last one, if we refinance in the first year, the seller's still going to get 3 years because that's what we negotiated as their interest payments. Meaning the seller is guaranteed an extra, what, 70,000 plus bucks on top of the purchase price. That's a win-win. But Stephen, what if the seller doesn't own the house outright? What if they still have a mortgage? That's okay too. What we'll want to do is check with their loan servicer to see if the mortgage is assumable. And then you do what's called a wraparound mortgage, where you take their mortgage plus what you're purchasing the house at and wrap it around. Their mortgage gets paid off and the seller's also still making their money. And you still have a lower interest rate. So win-win-win. Okay. So you've negotiated a purchase with the seller, or you're a seller, negotiated a purchase with the buyer. You're gonna wanna get an attorney involved at this point. And McFerrin Law is awesome. They're right here in Tacoma off of 74th. I've worked with them before. We do a little consultation as well as craft an actual agreement between you and the other party. This is why it's important that you wanna get an actual attorney involved for this step, because the seller financing contract is going to outlast the closing of the home. As in, you're still going to be in contract with that seller to perform, and the seller is also going to be in contract with you to perform. The seller may be able to get the house back if you don't make payments on time, or other things can be negotiated. So right here, you're going to want to get a lawyer involved, and McFerrin Law is definitely the place that we're going to want to go to. Almost done, but not quite. We're going to have to figure out how you're going to pay. Do you want to pay the seller directly and then pay the tax person directly? Or do you want to set up an escrow account to where you pay escrow every month, including the taxes that are going to be due, and then escrow will release all those funds to the seller and to the tax person? It's pretty simple in that regard, but there's more. I know. You're going to want to keep track. No matter whether you're going through an escrow account or you're doing it yourself. What happens if the seller passes away a year and a half in and their kids take over and they try to take the house back because there was 1 month that they don't have documented that you didn't pay? Well, in your own documentation then, you have that proof. Now, technically, you can skip out on the appraisal if you want to, if it's not in the contract, but I would negotiate it to be in the contract for both the buyer and the seller to have the option to renegotiate if it underappraises. This will help the seller know that they're not undercut, as well as help the buyer have peace of mind when they're sleeping in the house that they did not overpay on something that seller financed. Because especially if you end up having to sell the home for whatever reason, you want to make sure that you have enough in there to at least cover the cost of sales. Almost forgot why we want to also have it for the seller. In this case, if it overappraises, then the seller also has the option to renegotiate. So that's how we got this home in a nutshell. Basically, we were able to afford a house that was much larger than what we could afford in the traditional housing market with traditional financing. And the seller is making more money than what he expected to selling it on the traditional market and traditional financing. And he still has an income without having the responsibility of being the landlord.